Well, good morning, Emily. Just to let you know, in the link below, I'll leave the link to Stacy Seabrook's classic song called Truth Train. As truthers, we have a motto. It's called Get on the Train. I'm going to start off with a quote from a book by Dr. Sandra Lane. She wrote, "An accusation has been levelled at me time and time again that telling this story is disrespectful to the victim and her family. I disagree. What is disrespectful to anyone is accepting at face value information which is demonstrably false, scenarios which make no logical sense, and gaping holes covered over to shore up weak and questionable explanations, especially when that information, those scenarios and explanations are used specifically to bring a false sense of closure to the grieving and bereft, and at the same time to rob innocent people of their freedom." She carries on, "Truth-seeking is a precarious and often maligned pursuit. To be labelled a crazy conspiracy theorist, interfering do-gooder, fame seeker, evil bitch, murderer lover, sicko. These are the reactions of many who are afraid of the truth. That fear is understandable. We believe that justice and those we trust to take care of justice for us are the very foundations on which our safety and security are built. If they cannot protect us, who can? But those who react so negatively out of fear miss the most central point to truth-seeking. It is not only to ensure the correct person has been convicted, but also to discover what really happened." Dr. Sandra Lane was not talking about the Teresa Halbach case, but the words ring true so much in this case. You know, as truthers, I've said this many a time, but I'll say it again, repeat it and repeat it. As truthers, we don't wake up every morning wondering, what can we do today to undermine Wisconsin law enforcement, Wisconsin government? We don't. Now, it's interesting, isn't it? You're talking about the fact that all these things happened 15 years ago. I think you're being slightly disingenuous to yourself there. You've got to remember, Making a Murderer is huge, the Netflix documentary. There are 6 main inhabited continents in the world. We can discount Antarctica, there's not many people live down there. But of the others, Europe, Asia, Africa, Australasia, North America and South America. Throughout the world, people have watched Making a Murderer. They've watched you do your interviews. As you say, you point out that this all happened 15 years ago. However, Making a Murderer was only 4 years ago. And of course, it was the biggest case in Wisconsin history. And of course, they spent well over $1 million in order to convict Stephen Avery. And we often hear the word that, Making a Murderer is a phenomenon, a huge phenomenon. My pal, my good friend Eric Ose, as I've mentioned to you before, he's often considered as being the black belt of YouTubers. He once sent me a rundown of all the different countries in the world that have tuned in to watch his videos. It was over 50 different countries, people in 50 different, throughout the world, throughout all 6 continents of the world. You've got people tuning in, not just to Making a Murderer, but as I say, to YouTubers. Obviously, when Making a Murderer first came out, we were then treated to the main lawyers doing world tours. I've seen Dean Strang, I've seen Jerry Buting, I've seen Stephen Drizzen and I've seen Laura Nyrider in Edinburgh, Amsterdam, Sydney, Melbourne. So it's a huge, as you Americans say, it's a huge phenomenon. You know, I think you're belittling yourself by suggesting that it's just one case of many that you've covered. And of course, we know that even the Sexton Prize tried to cash in with his appalling book, you know, and tried to do tours that were getting cancelled left, right, and centre. One only needs to read the reviews on Amazon to realise just how poor Ken Kratz's book is. Now, I did ask you whether anyone had asked Mike Holbach about his statements. And you said, you know, I can't remember everything, you know, but I've done these articles. I think I've read every article about you, certainly covering MAM, and I haven't found any mention of you or any of your journalist colleagues asking that question. And I think if you had done, then you would have remembered. But here's the thing. Mike Holbach is a prominent, works for the Green Bay. He's, I believe, head of technology. I believe your studio is in Green Bay. Maybe you could do me a wee favour and just pop over and ask him. What does he make of the questions that I've raised with you? You know, in 1985, Stephen Avery was wrongfully convicted. The state used, as their weapon of choice, they used Penny Bernstein. They convinced her that Stephen Avery was guilty. They got her to pick out Stephen Avery as the attacker. Of course, we now know the lengths to which the Sheriff's Department went to secure that conviction. We know that Dennis Vogel knew perfectly well who the attacker was. He was told so by people within his own office. We know that Tom Kusurek knew that it wasn't Stephen Avery because Thomas Bergner of the City Police Department went and told him. And even Penny Bernstein herself went to Tom Kusurek and said, I've just had some strange phone calls. Are you sure that Stephen Avery was the right person? And then, of course, we know that Stephen Avery did an extra 8 years following the phone call to the Sheriff's Department from Brown County to say that you've got the wrong person in jail. What did they do? Sit on it for 8 years. And as soon as Stephen Avery is released, quickly write a report about it. But you know that Penny Bernstein is the only one that's ever apologised to Stephen Avery. And of course he accepted that apology. But there's never been an apology from Manitrock County Sheriff's Department. Indeed, on a couple of times in 2016, when I had lengthy phone calls with Robert Herman, he could barely bring himself to describe the wrongful 85 conviction as unfortunate. We know that that is actually referring to the fact that they got caught out. But you know, even though Penny then began to realise that Stephen Avery was innocent, who could she turn to? She turned to Thomas Kusurek and was told, leave it alone, we know what we're doing. Not a lot else that she can do, is there? So now we move into 2005. Between 2005 and 2007, once again, Stephen Avery wrongfully convicted. But their weapon of choice this time, or Ken Kratz's specific weapon of choice, was the media. We've got this obscene press conference that just about every lawyer you'll ever come across condemns that press conference. Why? Because it removes any presumption of innocence. There is simply zero reasonable doubt given before trial. Certainly in this country, that case would have been thrown out straight away. And any media people covering that press conference would have been thrown out, would have been facing charges for contempt of court. Now we know that northwest Wisconsin in particular doesn't really like the Avery family. Most people consider the Avery family, and it's not just a hatred, as I say, of Steve or Brendan, it's of the whole family. They see them as lower class people. But seriously, who are the lower class of people in all of this? Ken Kratz and his mob are very, very low class. So as I say, the weapon of choice was the media. And I'm afraid the media was completely duped. We hear, as I say, you in a phone conversation to Steve, you list all the evidence against him, all the evidence which has been shown to be completely bogus, and which, quite frankly, should have been considered pretty bogus at the time. 7 searches of a bedroom, a bonfire completely cremating a body in a couple of hours, the bullet being found 4 months later, thanks to the specificity of Brendan Dass's confession. It's absurd. It truly is. But, as with Penny Bernstein, who could she turn to? You know, who can the media in Wisconsin turn to if they've got doubts about the efforts of the state and law enforcement? As John Farrak, one of your colleagues, I'm sure you're familiar with the work of John Farrak. Unfortunately, he's no longer in Manitowoc. But as he once pointed out, as a journalist in northwestern Wisconsin, you're hardly going to do an article about the Green Bay Packers and tell everybody that they're a rubbish team. It's very difficult as media people to, who are you going to alert to the corruption there? But finally, have a listen to Stacy Seabrook's song. As I say, our motto is get on the train. Please, Emily, consider this my invite to you to get on board the train. Because this case is going to be blown wide open. As soon as we get the evidentiary hearing, then we can begin the process of reversing this appalling corruption in Wisconsin, in Manitowoc, in Calumet. So please, Emily, get on board the train. Get on the train. That's all I've got for today. Catch you again soon. Bye for now.